It's going to be this number. We just want to make that clear that these are just averages, and again, they're base rate estimates only. Any additional usages would be additional as well. And then the large retail establishment. Obviously, again, they're base rates. You can't really compare across the board on industries and retailers and businesses. So we did want to provide the information, but again, caution that it's not something that can be compared apples to apples necessarily in every case. But just to give you a baseline estimate.
I think the one that was specifically requested was the homeowner impact one, and you can see it's $12.74 a month next year.
Questions, comments? That brings us to the end of the water, wastewater, stormwater utility discussion.
Any last questions on rates and proposed rates for staff?
I have a couple of questions. I took the liberty of getting information from Jim regarding the capital improvement projects for the 3 utilities. And I don't know if anyone else is interested in this information, but it's kind of important, I think, when we're talking about oxidation ditches and pump stations and reservoirs, to see how much these things break down, and you know, how many millions for this project and how many hundreds of thousands for this project. And as we're moving forward, looking at increasing these utility rates higher than they've ever been increased in the history of the city, we might want to take yet another look at these projects and prioritize, and especially considering this economic climate that we're in. And this is, you know, $12.74 might not seem a lot, like a lot to some people, but you compound that over the next few years, and you know, I think it's going to make an impact. And I also want everyone to realize that businesses will be hugely impacted by this, just because they pay much larger rates, and especially retail businesses. They've been hurt by this economy, and they don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as profits these days.
Just a question, I know we're talking about wanting to approve across the board the smoothing 5 years incrementally, and what if we were to approve it on, say, a 2-year period of time or a 1-year period of time as we evaluate some of the capital projects, and maybe we push them out a 7-year window instead of a 5. Kind of tough to swallow this much of a rate increase in 5 years to have it be that high. Do you know what that impact would be if we chose not to adopt a 5-year plan?
Well, if you adopted the first year change that's proposed, we would be on track for a year, and we would maintain the plan that we have, and then we'd be back next year with the proposal that you have, and we'd be suggesting that. Now, to effect something meaningful, we would also be informed at that time by that deliverable around cost of service and what those implications would be. Remembering that system-wide, it doesn't change the revenue necessary to operate the system. Mm-hmm. It reallocates it. So some will pay more than they currently are and would under this across the board, and some would pay less potentially, I think is how that would happen, or pay less of an increase potentially versus more of an increase. In order to take a systemic look at each of the utilities and try to grab meaningful enough chunks of that capital plan that it would materially affect the rates, in terms of deferring them and trying to amortize those costs further out, we would have to reopen the get our expert in and have them, because we can't just look at that list ourselves and say, and that's a big one, let's do that one 40 years from now. Oh, okay, well, how does that impact our ability to purvey the water or to treat the waste? So we would have to know exactly, some of them are domino in the way they go, and so they're lined up the way they are for specific reasons. So it's unknown, I guess, to answer your question, whether, you have to imagine if that is the complete universe of projects to be done in 5 years. Now, I don't know if there's things that we know about that are 6, 7, 8, 9 years out, but let's say there weren't, but I'm sure there are some other ones. But if you could take that 5-year block and make it an 8-year block or a 9-year block, will that smooth it out? I think it will. But because you're not getting as much revenue earlier on, you get some diminishing return over time. But it could soften some of the increases. But as you saw in that hypothetical chart that RJ provided, which of course I'm not going to find right now. Here we go. It's really the sewer utility that is suffering right now as being underfunded for a long time, and 20% increase is necessary just for the sewer fund to keep its nose above water. Just today, as we speak, with no additional utility work, the remaining 8.5 is what's necessary to fund the capital projects. We could certainly look at a couple ways the council could go. You could grab 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years of this proposal and adopt any part of that. In any that you did, if it was more than a year, we certainly are committed to be back before you with updates and information, and we could try to see what, I forget the name of the consultant that works with us on our purveying and on our wastewater plant, but
Kennedy Jenks.
Kennedy Jenks is a name that may be familiar to some of you, having worked with them previously. See what it would take for them to do a stretch 5 to 8 or stretch 5 to 9 analysis for us, and still have a system that works, and see what that would do. Bring that back next year and see if that mitigates years 2, 3, 4, 5 out into 6, 7, and 8.
Before we invest all that time and effort and money, is there any guarantee, and Jim, you probably have the answer to this, that the feds and the state are not going to require updates every year from now on?
We have
Yeah, they do. They look at our updates every year, and we have system deficiencies right now. And some of these projects, have already been deferred. So, we've got ecology and health that have identified health has actually identified low pressure area on the east side of town, and for ecology, they want redundancy at the treatment plant. If we have a 96 type storm that comes in, and we only have one oxidation ditch, and let's just say that the microorganisms in that oxidation ditch die and it goes septic, and those holding ponds that we have out there, they're full of water. If that goes septic, the only place we can waste is into those cells, because we don't have another oxidation ditch to treat. Goes out to the Columbia River. So then we've got implications there. We've got 10